One of those will do. I'll just edit the right one into the place.
That look of consternation on your face. I love watching you when you don't know what's going on.
Second guessing that was. That was second guessing.
It was painful.
Hello and welcome to the QUACKCAST. This is QUACKCAST number 482 and we're calling this one the second guess. The second, not the first, but the second. Did you guess right the first time? Well, no, you didn't, so you get a second chance. No. This is about second guessing yourself, based on Tunce's news post.
Title.
What's that?
Sorry. Said you should rethink that title.
Exactly. This is about second guessing your second guess and your second guess, like, repeatedly until you can't do anything. It's based on Tance's news post from Saturday, which is, the day, let's see, the 6th? I'm not sure. Anyway, so second guessing. But before we get into that, I have to bring up the featured comic. Tance didn't do the feature. Her name's just on the top of my head. So I have to second guess that and say it was QUACKCAST who did the feature. And the feature she did was Moxie the Magical Maid. So tell us about Moxie the Magical Maid. Kawaii.
Hello, this is QUACKCAST, and the feature I've selected for this week is Moxie the Magical Maid by A for Extreme, and it is rated M for Mature. Moxie discovers the home of a very eccentric client after answering an advertisement for cleaning services in the paper. It turns out she now must work with a person who only needs her after the sun is set. Will her can-do attitude and very friendly personality shine through in a job that is nights only? The art is drawn in black and white digital ink with a lot of use of texture shading. Step into the lair of a supernatural client and read Moxie the Magical Maid by A for Extreme, rated M.
And that was our feature. Kawaii featured Moxie the Magical Maid. That's 3 M's in that. Bit of an overload of M's. Alright, so next up, Gumwallace has given us a theme to the comic O Sarhiloho, which was a comic I featured a while ago, and it's, oh my god, this comic looks so good. I'm so happy I featured it. But maybe I featured it too early because it's getting even better, so should go and read O Sahilo. Right, so the theme that Gumwallace has given us: fly past the techno spires, neon lit souks, Persian carpets made out of electrical wires, and street markets full of old robot parts. This tune takes 1001 Arabian Nights into dark cyberpunk future that no one could foresee. So, take it away, Gumwallace, with the theme to Osailo. that was the theme, Osarilo, by Shizazamura, rated T. So have a look at that comic and go back and listen to that theme again because it's really cool. Okay, so second guessing. Tance, you came up with this because you second guess everything. Is that?
Of course, I second guess, triple guess, four times guess, guess.
Quadruple. That would be everything.
Whatever. I will have to second guess that approach. But yeah, I do second guess a lot of things while I am creating things, and I wrote the particular article because I think that second guessing can be a vice for the creative process, but it can also be a silver lining if handled properly and if incorporated constructively, let's say, to the whole thing, the whole procedure. So, and often it stems from being too focused for too long on the same thing, and then it might start coming across to you distorted compared to someone that is exposed to it cold, as we say. And that means that your perception might not be as objective anymore, not necessarily in a good way, like saying, oh, I'm doing this awesome thing and it's not very awesome, but actually on the other end of the spectrum, you might feel that it's not as good, or it doesn't do what you wanted it to do, or it doesn't land the way you would like it to land, and it might not actually be objective, what you're thinking or sensing. And there are ways to deal with this. So that's one thing. And the other thing is that, and I didn't mention that in the article, is that you might second guess because either you compare yourself to others and perhaps you like what was done in other artists' work or creators' work, you like that better compared to what you're doing, or the reactions that you get or that you don't get to certain pages that you upload and stuff might make you rethink or self-doubt whether you are doing it right. So that was the premise in general.
Okay. Yeah, that one about comparing yourself to others, that's something I frequently fall into. Like I see someone with really great work and I think, wow, that's so damn good. Mm-hmm. I would, I envy that person's style and I want to work as good as that. And, so yeah, that can be a problem. Or it's not just that. It's not just like I envy that person's style. It's like, wow, that person's so good. That means I have to be extra good to be at that level and to be happy with my work. It has to be at the level that they have, that I have perceived that they have got. So my work is not perfect until I perceive that I have a similar level to that, which that can be the negative thing. Like, comparing yourself to others. And it means, you don't progress because you're always trying to reach some kind of theoretical point of perfection.
Well, there's nothing wrong with striving.
Hey?
Okay, all right. What was I saying?
There's nothing wrong with striving.
Oh, all right. Yeah, so and there's nothing wrong with striving to be better. It's sometimes second guessing what you're doing in comparison with somebody else's work can be good if you have a good mind frame about it. like if you like for instance, if you see somebody else's work and they're doing some particular things that you really like, that you say, hey, for instance, like I like their line work a lot, I wish I was better at line work, how can I go about it getting better at line work, and then working on that. That's a healthy way to go about it. But if you are comparing yourself to someone else's work and saying, well, I suck, period. Why did I get out of bed this morning? I don't want to do this anymore. Then, yeah, then you don't progress at all. You shoot yourself in the foot. So, one way of handling it can be very progressive and help you out a ton. Because we're always going to see works that we admire and that and many of us are always going to wish we were a little bit better. That's a story of so many artists out there, even ones that, you know, we ourselves probably think are already perfect. They're always self-critiquing. But the difference is, are you second guessing and then critiquing, or are you second guessing and then damning your work?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's always that problem when people don't make progress, basically. Like second guessing's okay, but not the third guessing and the fourth guessing and the fifth guessing.
Yeah. And the thing that comes with second guessing is that often it happens in a very circular manner. So it is very easy not to get answers for your second guessing that are objective and that you can latch on to in order to progress and get past that point. It might be very relativistic what you think, or it might be, how shall I say it? You might just say very general things about what your doubts are, so that it is very hard to find any practical way to soothe these doubts and to put them to rest, so that you can move on forward. So that is the challenge when you get into this kind of trip, let's say, of second guessing, is that if you feel that you have hit this point, don't let it fester and sap your creative energy, because you don't let yourself decide how you want to settle this second guessing, this doubt, this conundrum, whatever you want to call it. So, like Pitface said, if you want to improve, if you don't like your line work, then work to improve it and just continue on, rather than say, oh my God, my line work is not like that awesome line work I just saw. Which is one thing. And the other thing is, consider sometimes that perhaps what you are making is not suitable for the style that you saw that you like very much. Like, for example, if you really like, I don't know, if you really like the style of Aladdin, it might not be suitable for a story for a story like Mouse, for example. Maybe you don't want very touchy-feely, cuddly, cute Nazis in your story, although the line would be awesome. Or maybe you don't want the thing to look like a very crisp, prim and clean and sanitized place that the story is taking place in, and so on and so forth. So consider that maybe the choices that you have made make sense for what you are making, even if you like something else that you see more by comparison, or appeals to you more at a specific point in time, and so on and so forth. So set certain questions to yourself when you rethink things.
Yeah, that is a good idea.
Yeah. Absolutely, especially because especially when you're just starting off on a project, or even if you've been working on it for a while, but it's still in its beginning stages, it's still oftentimes may grow even as you're executing it.
Mhm.
You might start to realize what it's about, what it's actually about a bit more, or understand its characters more, especially if, you didn't make many drafts beforehand, or you didn't, experiment much with it. I've been going through this myself with my new comic, Inhabitants, and anybody who's reading it, well, by the time this goes up, you'll be aware that it's now on a hiatus already, although it's like barely 5 pages in. And the reason for that is, as I went along, so I got the main idea of this story in my head, and I wasn't totally sure where to start. I had an inkling of an idea that I liked, and I thought I would just start there and go on, and it would come together more as I progressed, which is what happened. But the outcome of that is that I no longer like how it's begun. So as I was making it, have currently been making it, the idea has grown more into not something else completely, but something that I need to root down from the beginning. And so now I have to stop what I'm doing and go back, not only redo the beginning, but I also need to write a bit more into the future so that this doesn't keep on happening again. Solely because I'm publishing it now, I'm putting it publicly, and I don't want to have to go back and restart it 20 times. But I also am not going to punish myself for doing this, because I think it's completely necessary, and probably should be expected that as you begin to write a story, it might start to turn into something else. Now, hopefully, I'm pretty confident that as I go forward, this isn't really going to keep happening, because I'm progressing on the same sort of storyline. It's not continuously morphing into these other ideas. I have an idea in mind. It's just how I'm executing that idea is still developing. So it's like I prematurely started to give birth to this idea. And, if you're going to start over and if you're going to redo your idea, it's better that it happens probably earlier than later on. So if you are second guessing, if you do have that inkling in the back of your head that's scratching and saying, maybe this isn't quite right, don't ignore it until you smash into that brick wall and say, well, fuck, where am I going now? This is completely derailed. Listen to it. Ask yourself why you feel that way. Don't be afraid of it just because you might have to do something unpleasant, like redesign aspects of your story.
That's
man.
a really good point. Actually, that's something I learned from when I was, doing my my art training years and years ago, is that you can, like, if something's not working well in a drawing, you can be like redoing that thing over and over and over again, and you just get stuck on that one thing. And sometimes it's better just to get rid of that whole thing and start again. Like, a lot of times it's not, but for some things, yes, that's what you have to do. And the way I apply that now is when I'm doing a comic page and I get like stuck on I'm doing these characters in a scene and this arm movement's wrong, and I keep redrawing that arm over and over again, like rubbing out a bit and redrawing it. That indicates to me that the whole, like, it's not worth just keeping on working on that one thing, because it's just holding me up. So what you got to do then is just erase that whole thing and like just put the arm in a different position and move on. Because just sometimes the foundation for a thing is wrong, and you can't fix it by like doing this little thing and doing this little thing, because like the whole foundation of it is wrong, and it's making everything wrong. So just like start again on that thing, or else you're just gonna be hung up by it. So yeah, sometimes it's good to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I remember I had that experience once. I had I draw very linearly in the sense that I make a panel, I pencil, ink, color it, put it on its place in the page, and then I move on to the next one, which sounds probably appalling to most artists out there. But I remember this one specific page, which was right after my first big, let's say, shock in Without Moonlight, which is, I guess, spoiler, I don't know, which is when Anna is shot and shot dead. There's no doubt. And the very next panel had to be Diomedes being shot because she died right in front of him and bits of hair are on him. So I drew him from an angle that I felt would best convey that, but it wasn't working. It just didn't hit me that I couldn't see his emotion in a sense. And I kept telling myself it will show when we color it. It's going to show when we color it and stuff, but it didn't. So then I had to force myself to just scrap that particular panel, although I liked it, and go at it again and draw him from the angle that he actually is shown in the page. So that, I guess, that was my completely draw experience that I had. I remember right now, I'm sure I had more, but that one I remember because I struggled with it back and forth all the while I was drawing that panel rather than years. Like, I knew it wasn't right from the moment I made the initial sketch, but I was saying to myself, you are delusional, it's working. The sketch is correct. What is your problem? And stuff like that. So
I like that. You are delusional.
yes, I have this little conversation with myself. So.
Actually, yeah.
And
So
that's the thing, is it can be hard to tell. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, it can be hard sometimes, a lot of times actually, to tell the difference if that little voice in the back of your head is legitimate, saying, hey, this isn't right, this isn't right, this isn't right. What are you doing? Something's wrong. Stop. What are you doing? Or if it's like, or if it's that same voice saying, like, you know, like, for instance, if you've been looking at something for too long and looking at the finer details too much, and it's oftentimes a matter of perspective. But I think a lot of times, you know, if you're not sure, put it down for a little bit, walk away from it, come back. And if that voice is persisting, then you probably have a problem on your hands.
Probably have a problem.
Which is how it goes for me. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of like writers recommend, like teachers and stuff like that recommend, like when you're writing stories or books or, you know, scripts, probably comics also, is to like once you're done your draft, you put it away like for a long time, like months, like 6 months at a minimum kind of thing, some people say. And it's kind of like you need it gone to be able to detach yourself emotionally from the experience of writing it and just being in the moment and how you feel at that particular moment. I mean, you're so biased one way or the other that you can't be, you know, you just can't be objective until you step away and then go back and look at it. I mean, I would say maybe with artwork, for me anyway, it's easier to look sooner and be objective. But with writing, it's like just writing prose, it's tough.
Yeah.
Like you have to kind of put it away for a long time, maybe.
Well, the concept behind that is that you create the illusion of coming back to the text and reading it cold as you can make it since you are the one who created it. And 6 months sounds a lot to me. I mean, as a writer,
Yeah, I've never done that myself.
I'm saying because I have done it. The longest I have left a manuscript to this. I have put it aside to get that effect. Is maybe a couple of weeks, and only if I had such a strong reaction to it that I either really loved it or really hated it, that I wanted to be a little more calm about it. And I guess now that I'm going back to edit the third book, it's going to be the longest because I haven't touched it in something like 3 years. So we'll see how that works. That will be an interesting experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. and the reason I left it for so long was because I knew that something was wrong the moment I finished it. That's why I never published it. But I didn't know what. Now I feel I know what. So I'm gonna go back and correct it now. So we will see.
Yeah.
That reminded me, that is also a good technique. Leaving something for a while is a really good technique for artwork. Like when we're talking about second guessing art, I do that a lot, like as part of my practice, in that I'll flip a drawing and then have a look and see the errors that I've made and like fix those, and flip it the other way, and then I'll set that layer to being like faded, and then I'll draw over the top and then fix errors. So it's like second guessing is like built into my practice. But actually, if something's not working or whatever, like it's good to take a break from it, go away. This is talking about it from a drawing perspective. Then come back and look at your drawing again, and then things will come out to you, and you'll realize, oh, hang on. Not only like is that pose wrong, but those characters really shouldn't be doing this here. This scene should happen sometime later, or you know, something like that. That can be really helpful. Just leave it for like a day, maybe, or leave it for 2 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes you can kind of like chill out about something really quickly. Just step away. You know, take the night off, take a walk, do whatever. It can give you that separation. Yeah.
Work on something else. Come back and see.
Yeah. The other thing about self-doubt that might set in is when you get reactions or you don't get reactions from your audience that you would expect or you would want to elicit, or in any case you don't see them. Like you might actually be eliciting what you want, but people don't emote in the comments. They don't comment, or they don't actually say what is on their minds and stuff. And that can be difficult to handle because you are relying on external feedback.
Yeah.
And that is something that I had to struggle with very recently, actually, with the scene that I'm tackling now in Without Moonlight, because a lot of people, actually, I think I felt at some point that I had succeeded a little too well in what I wanted to do, because I got this influx of comments that were saying how dark and unsettling and high risk that they felt the situation that is currently, like this current scene is presenting, is. And that was the point. That's what part of what I want to show is that, the good guy side, let's say, isn't all fun, games, and flowers, because this is war and things happen. So there's this thing. But I caught myself thinking, okay, have I gone too far? Am I making this too dark? Is this comic now becoming just way too dark, darker than I expected it to? And it kept me up a little, actually. You know, just before I wrote the article, and that's why I wrote it, because I tossed and turned in bed, and I was thinking, like, am I going too far with this? Am I using this and going way overboard with the whole darkness that existed around things like this? But then then I had to sleep. I slept before I answered myself. But when I woke up, I realized that no, that's what I wanted to show. So it's doing its work. The fact that I'm getting the feedback is a good thing, and it might not make the comic super popular because it deals with raw things, darkness that is presented raw, quote unquote, because it is sanitized, but raw enough, let's say. But that's okay, because that's what I wanted to show. And that settled my self-doubt. So that's why I wrote the article. And I felt that I could share the fact that you have to answer yourself in a way that settles in your heart this self-doubt. You shouldn't let it linger.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, you shouldn't give it more power than it deserves.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, pizza's gone. Oh, I just noticed that. Baines, you said you had like a lot of different like stories about the whole second guessing thing. Has that been a big part of your process in Typical Strange?
Yeah, and there's like I would put it. I guess I would separate it into 3 stages, kind of, and settle on everyone because this is going to be about an hour-long lecture. I'm just kidding. Just reading Pitt's texts there. So there's the stage. Excuse me. There's like the stage where you're working on stuff on your own, and it's in your head. It's like either nothing's on paper, or for me, it's like random sketches, random bits of dialogue, random outlines. This happens. This moment, and that stuff is. I mean, Tanz's article talks about this. Like that stuff can be in your head for years. I know, like the article hit home for me because I'm at one of those moments in my comic now. Like I'm in a scene that, man, it's been on my mind for. I remember talking to my brother about it like 2 years ago, and so it was in my mind even before that. So it's the kind of like outlining, conceptualizing stage is the first part, where there's a lot of second guessing and a lot of hemming and hawing and like, should it be this? Should it be that? Like, is it going to have vampires, werewolves, and wizards? Is it going to have aliens and ghosts? I don't know.
Cowboys.
Like, there's all this stuff, and I like talking with other writers and stuff about ideas and people having all these ideas, and they just kind of go all over the place. It can be a fun time, but it can be a time you can get lost in a little bit. But I guess if anything, that's the time to do your second guessing and to do your kind of exploring and like thinking about stuff. And I mean, that's part 1 of second guessing. So anyway, you get through all that. Eventually, though, you got to get stuff down. So you have to break out of that to begin with and like get something going. And even I would say get it done, get a first draft done, or get an outline done, or however you approach it, you know, whatever it looks like, whatever your first draft looks like, whether it's just an outline. That's kind of what mine is, even if there's little gaps in it, like it's kind of an outline. And then even more important, you have to get through a draft. That's more appropriate to prose maybe than comics. Like I said before, I think a lot of us were writing and even posting pages before the finish of the story is even done, you know. So that's fine. I mean, it is what it is, kind of thing. But I guess first stage is outlining, figuring out, and then getting a finished product, whatever that product is, And then next is kind of like doing finished pages. So either second draft or whatever. So that's I'm kind of going all over the place here. I'm second guessing this whole speech.
No, I get what you're laying down. No, stop it. You're doing good.
Because I think when I'm
I
talking
get all
about
three of your
outlining,
points so far. Now you're on pavement. Go.
Yeah, me too.
so like outlining, you're kind of exploring. Maybe that's not so much second guessing as exploring. You write your first draft once you have a basic idea and you plow through it. And you have to get it done. This is my new way of thinking. Because I've run into unfinished things and unrealized ideas too much. So I'm kind of like, you got to get something done, because then you have something to work with. And that's kind of when your editing brain can kick in, like whether you have rough sketches or a script or a first draft of a story, then your editing brain can go through it. You can get logical with it. And that's a tough moment. And that's a time for second guessing, maybe. And it's challenging, like to go through it. And then maybe between the finishing the first draft and then revising is when you take your break, whether it's a day or a week or months or whatever it is. And that's hard. The third thing is when you're actually releasing it publicly. Like if something's published commercially, it's done. Then you're done with it and you got to let it go.
Unless your name is George Lucas.
Exactly. Yeah. Ridley Scott.
That didn't work out. That
No. But if you're just, creating something for yourself, or it's just little things, or even like mine is kind of shortish stories, 25 to 45 page stories, as individual comics, and I've done very little editing. There's one page I've edited a couple times. I took a character out, put it back in, took him back out. But that's like nobody knows,
Yeah.
But webcomics are kind of like an in-between thing because you are releasing it to the public, but you are allowed to take it away, rethink it, redo it. I think that's you gotta do what you gotta do, kind of thing. Like aside from time spent away, another way to get objective really quickly, I find, is to post your page. Then you're out of the mindset of the little details, the colors, the this, the that, and you look at it. Like for me, sometimes that's the first time I really look at something objectively. It's like, okay, the page is up, and I'm like, oh boy, that is bad. That's terrible. Or it's like, oh, that worked, And then audience feedback is part of that. Like if you are lucky enough to get comments and stuff like that, like you can sort of see sometimes, like, is this working? Is it not? Or is it somewhere in between, So that's the third part.
Yeah.
Is like sort of other people seeing it. And that I don't know. Like if you're early in your story, like Pitt, it's kind of like, I think that's valid to say, okay, I'm rethinking.
And I have to also say, oh, sorry.
No, please go ahead. My throat hurts from talking so much.
And I want to, sorry, and bring the example, very successful example of someone that had the guts when rethinking something to stop and restart, not once but twice, 3 times before she actually created what she wanted, and that's Sarah N. Daniel. And when I have been following her work, I really like her style, and I like how she deals with vampires in general. She's the vampire queen of the web comics for me. But initially, she had started with a completely different story and a completely different vampire. And she had written and created quite a few pages. Must have been something like 100 pages or something, a lot of pages. And then she stopped and said, you know what, I'm rebooting the entire story. And her fans were not too happy about it, but they were sort of fine, expecting the next thing. And she started the next thing, and it was better, and people still loved it. as much as the previous, or even more than the previous one. And then around 50 or more pages, again, I don't remember at how many pages, but it was quite a long way in. She said, you know what, this isn't working. I have hit the brick wall that Tweetface has mentioned earlier. And this story is dead. And I'm
That goddamn brick wall.
and I'm going to start it again, and now I know what I want to do. And she started Daniel. And Daniel is now complete. She has finished it. And it's amazing. It's one of the best vampire stories I have ever read, period. And I have read a lot of stories, seen a lot of movies and stuff like that. And I remember that when she had announced that, there was a lot of pushback and pressure on her to continue the story that she said that was dead and that she couldn't go on with it anymore because it wasn't what she wanted. But she held to her decision, and it was the better decision. And it shows because, first of all, she completed the story. The story is classes above the one that she stopped making.
Yeah.
And it feels like a complete work that after all those other drafts of this other story, she had incubated in a sense in her mind, and you can see traces of the previous stories there. It's there, like you can see those early explorations, let's say, now matured into something that is beautiful. So if she had heard or pushing her to continue the other story, which was still a good enough story, she wouldn't have created Daniel. So what I'm saying is that when you feel, no matter how long or how many times you have restarted or experimented, or maybe you are 200, 300 pages into something, okay, if you feel that you are done with that and now you are going to stop and create what you really want, do it, because that is always going to be the right choice, even if your fans hate it, because they did hate it at the time. Now everyone is praising it, including me, because I have to say, yeah, just a little bit. I have to say that when she said that she was going to stop that story, I was a little pissed because I wanted to see how it would end.
Yeah.
I didn't pressure her to continue, though. I have to say that. And now I'm glad that she did not. End of story.
What's it called? Daniel, you said it's called?
Daniel?
Daniel. I'm going to put a link.
Okay. Yeah. I'd like to check that out. I mean, like, you know, if you think about it, so say she would have continued on with the story as she was writing it, even if, you know, everybody was loving it. I imagine that if you force yourself to continue on something like that, eventually you can grow to resent your own work. And that seems like it seems terrible to be stuck working on work that you resent. Not to say that she would have ended up resenting it, but that sounds like just the road to get on to that kind of mindset, you know? So it's like either what, she keeps on it and never makes it how she wants and resents it, or she goes through the pains of restarting it and the groaning and stuff, but ends up with something that she's happier with, and thankfully also her fans are happier with.
Yeah.
And that might not always be the case, but I don't know. Ending up despising your own work just seems really tragic.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And not getting there is far more important than pleasing an audience. And that I'm not saying that just lightly, because pleasing your audience is part of the fuel for continuing, but there is a limit to that as well. So
yeah, I mean, you have to do what you have to do. Like, although you don't want to let down people and you don't want to be like sort of disappoint them and stuff like that. It's like if you know it has to be different, then you're the one who's allowed to make that decision.
Yeah. You're the one.
Yeah.
Try and understand that.
Baby, you're the one.
Oh, that's a good one. I was thinking of the John Farnham song.
Oh, okay.
You're the one trying to understand that. Make a noise and make it ring. Oh. Well, it just goes on like that. It's really cool. I think there was a horrible cover version recently that sucks. The original 80s version, that's what you can listen to. I digress. Yes, sorry for that. Yeah, Sarah's work, I followed that, and yeah, at the time I did find that irritating, because she kept going back and back, and it felt like 5 million times that she restarted that. That's how it felt like. And it wasn't like, it's like, oh, I'm 2 pages in, I'm going to restart. It's like you said, it was 100 pages. It's like you got way through that, and it's like, okay, I'm restarting, and wow, okay, we're going to go all through this all the way again.
Yeah, it was a bit like a Peter Parker's or a Batman's origin story, like
Oh, yeah.
a couple of versions, 3, 4 versions. But again, having seen what it led to, I'm just happy she stuck to her guns. All that.
It got better. Yeah, for a lot of us in webcomics, though, we will, like Bane said, it's not a first... The work you see is the first draft. And you'll see work improve as it goes. So the earlier pages of a comic will be pretty rough. And the storytelling will be pretty, not that good. But you look at...
Loose,
yeah, pretty loose. But you look at like the 100-page or the 300-page of a comic, of a web comic, and you'll see, wow, there's a lot of progress that's been made. So yeah, it's like Ben said, it was an in-between kind of process. So that can be good too. The restarts, but also the following someone's progress. But you have to do what's right for you, really. Like, you're saying, Tars, you have to do what feels the right way for you to do it, because you're the one working on it. And if you're not happy with it, well, then you might just finish it halfway through your project and you'll never ever progress any further than that, and that's sad.
And that's the thing, like having learned from that experience with Sarah, if when people say I'm restarting now, I'm always saying, like, go for it. If you feel that you need to restart, just go for it, because that nobody restarts for fun. Nobody wants to go back to formula, let's say, or to go back to page 1. Like if you have made even like a couple of pages, you know that nobody likes to do that thing. If they feel that they have to do it, then something a lot better is going to come out of this. So never, as an audience, try to pressure an artist or a creator to do something that they feel they are done with. It's like flogging a dead horse, and it's only going to get putrid. And not in the fun way of pit faces. In a very, very unfun way.
Or you could go the ultra hard mode. Like in computer games, you have beginner mode, normal mode, hard mode, expert mode, carnage mode, and I think the person who did carnage mode was Amelius. So her approach is to not only work on the old version of your story and keep on going with that, but also work on the reboot at the same time and be doing both of them together.
Okay, okay. Respect to her. I don't know how to do that. Awesome.
Carnage mode.
Never. No.
That's
Yeah.
No, it's just like I realized, believe it or not, like I'm almost, I think I'm 20 pages away from the 200-page mark after all the years. And I just realized the full scope of the fucking darkness, sorry for the language,
Oh no,
that
Thomas.
that I have tackled with this particular comic, and I think I'm coming to terms with it now a lot more than before, with the things that are coming up. So that was good self-doubt. But yeah, sometimes you don't realize what it is you are embarking on until you have embarked on it.
Yeah.
And that's also not necessarily a bad thing. So yeah.
Yeah. No, some things just come more from the gut. Like Putrid Meat is some, whereas this that I'm starting now, it's just it's a little bit of a different beast, and that's all I'm going to say about it. But I mean, and second guessing also comes with the different ways that you go about writing your comic. You know, it I don't know, maybe just some story beats will come easier, some will be harder to parse out, you know? I mean, if you talk to any writer, especially ones that work on anthology, had a number of books and stuff like that, or short stories and stuff. I'm sure that they've had a whole history of starting, restarting, probably thousands of times, and not even restarting, but you know, throwing away pages and then second guessing how they threw away, then you know, going back and forth because each story is going to, even from the same writer, same artist, is going to be different.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember way back when I thought I was old and I was not. Anyway, I remember that when I wrote I didn't think it was the first draft, but the first draft of The Art of Ailing, when it was still one book and not three, the realization that I had something that wasn't good enough, and the realization that the potential of the story held so much more than what was on the page, and getting back not only to rewrite the book itself, I had to go back to rebuild the entire world. I had to rebuild the world, and I had to rework the magic. I had basically do everything from scratch. I remember that it was extremely painful to realize that, and to realize that I had to toss away something that at the time I loved. Now I look at it fondly, like, oh, look at that! I was being so cute and naive writing this. Yeah, and sometimes you might restart and have self-doubt after you finish the thing, because I had finished the book. It was done. And that book had rewrites still. So
yeah, it's part of it. It's part of the process. The benefit with comics, like Baines was saying, is that because it's not fully published, you can take pages down and you can redo them. I mean, it's really, really hard to do a whole story that involves like reboots and stuff like that. But like, I will occasionally take a page down and redo a panel, then upload it again. I just secretly do that. That's what I do. It annoys me so much that I will do that. I'll take a whole page down and redo, like even a portion of a page, and upload it again.
Right.
So yeah, it's part of our privilege of doing webcomics.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of think of it as like webcomics are in that cool middle area. Like you can actually share it publicly, but it's also like it can be a work in progress if you want. Like I think of Sarah and her vampire story, and like think like, what if she said, "Oh, I can't redo it because how are these emotional moments or these important beats going to play to people when they've already seen another version of that? Like they won't be surprised, they won't be, you know, whatever. Like they'll already know kind of what's happening or whatever. It's just going to be all like kind of reworked." But you gotta be, I mean, that's gotta be not your priority. Like you have to do what's right for what you're writing, you know. I kind of feel lucky that my comic is like standalone issues. So it's like if one isn't quite as good, which has happened a lot, I'm like, oh well, next story will be better.
I also have to say that if the story is good, even if people know what's coming emotionally, it will still hit them emotionally anyway. Even though they know it's coming, it still will work. Maybe not in the same exact quality, but the measure of the impact still will be there, one way or the other. So don't worry too much about that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's the kind of thing I think about when I ponder, like, oh, should I start over? I've never seriously thought of it, but just in general. And like new ideas, I have a few pages of new stories, and I'm like, I should kind of figure out where it's going before I start, or maybe it should be a book instead. It's like you sort of hesitate, and you're like, oh, what if I do this and people see it, but then I want to do it again? But I think it's okay to do that. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Like you know.
And you know, I think and I think there's also, not to make this the start over cast, because there's many more aspects to rethinking things and starting over, but on the subject of starting over, I think there's also just something very liberating in it. I mean, especially, say for instance, you're writing, and even if you're not hitting a wall per se, but if it just doesn't hold the same passion that you used to have, I guess that's still kind of a bit of a wall. Yeah, when you kind of lose that spark a bit. Starting over is so invigorating sometimes that, like, if you're having second guesses, and starting over just seems like the best breath of fresh air, but you're not sure if you're just doing it just because it's something. There's no rule that says that you have to publish everything that you make. If you really want to do it, and of course also if you have the time, try making something in your own privacy. You know what I mean? Try making something that you don't necessarily plan on showing the world, or at least right away. You can let it kind of, I was gonna say fester in the room. That's not the term.
Fest.
Let it develop in the womb. I've been listening to a lot of death metal lately. And maybe then you can get a really good beat about whether it's worth over. There's really a delay.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm starting to ramble. I do this a lot, where I restate my point over and over again. But you guys get what I'm saying, I think. Maybe. I need a script. You guys need to start giving me a script.
Yeah, I absolutely get it. And sometimes it does need to just roll around in your head for a good while. Um, and it does need to give you a sense of security that you will sail on that boat for a while and it will be fine before you start publishing anything, at least. And just saying that, especially for extremely long projects like the one I have, which I hope at least I will finish before I die. At least not the volume, the big volumes, but the entire scope of what I want to do. If there are some things that cause you fear, not fear, just qualms, let's say, on how it will impact the audience, and maybe that is a good thing and not a bad thing to have doubts for. Like, whatever the impact of the audience is, if it is what you want to do deep down, then just go ahead and do it. Even if it's not like the most popular thing ever. And I'm saying that because there were some hints in some discussions that maybe by having all these very dark things in my story, maybe people just won't like it, and it's so hard to stomach that people just don't want to follow it. And in the end, I said to myself, well, that's fine. Not everything is to be read, for laughs, and you have to have a mood for certain things, and that's fine. So I'm moving on without having this qualm and self-doubt, is what I'm saying.
It's a serious subject. But it helps.
Yeah, the fact that it is the narrative, like not moving pictures, but the sequential images doesn't make it necessarily Tom and Jerry, guys.
Tom and Jerry.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
All right, I think.
Of course not.
Oh, go on. I was gonna wrap up because
Of course
I think
not.
we've plumbed the depths of the well of the second guess. Unless you want to second guess that and add a few more points, which I'm fine doing if you want to do that. All right. This has been a valuable discussion on this, so second guessing is a good thing, but just don't let it cripple you. Okay?
Exactly.
That's the important thing. It's do what's right for you, but if you recognize that is hampering you, then it's time to stop. Okay. I think that's a good way to underline it.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you very much for listening to QUACKCAST number 482. I'm Ozone Ocean, and with me is Tance, Baines, and Pit. Goodbye.
Bye. I got.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.